And I want to welcome everyone to this episode of Unintentional Heroes. It's a podcast that brings you some of the most wonderful and talented people that are in the space of not only marketing, but in all kinds of other areas that are of benefit to you and your future and your growth. We have had a lot of fun on Unintentional Heroes over the last 74 episodes. And of course, every once in a while, we have a little technical glitch. So I apologize to you that we're expecting this to be at 10 o'clock. It's now 10:35, but I know some of you will be joining us live and others will be joining us on the replay. The very special guest I have today, I met a week or so ago, and she and I have had a chance to chat a couple of times at length. And it has been an absolutely fascinating discussion each and every time we've talked. Our guest is Rosemarie, and she has some of the most unique experiences in life that she is able to pass on to you so that you can grow and benefit. So instead of me talking about, why don't we just let Rosemarie come on and join us right now? Rosemarie, welcome to Unintentional Heroes podcast today.
Thank you. And I'm looking at Unintentional Hero. And so much of what I speak about is doing things with intention. And if we do things with intention, then certainly we become an unintentional hero. Intention is so key to every aspect of our interchange and our sense of self.
As we move forward into that, Rosemarie, would you give us a little bit of history about who you are, some of the things you've done as you've gained so much knowledge over the last few years. I know you did some great work in New York, and just give us a little quick history about who you are.
Someone who was born with a need to see, to explore, and a sense of insatiable curiosity. And I never allowed that to leave, in spite of the fact that as a little girl, being brought up in the family of first generation Italian, the concept was little girls, little boys should be seen and not heard. Somehow I felt that that was not suitable for me, that there was something I needed to know and to understand. So from the beginning, there was this feeling, and that's the reason I'm so understanding, supportive, and sympathetic to the child that wants to understand and may be considered problematic because the child isn't just quietly compliant. So that led to my first career area. I have two masters, and they were initially in education. The sense that a child is not to be molded into only what someone else wants for that child, but to be free, to be able to be that child's own person. So my first career was in education of the gifted, and I was the founder of the Association for the Learning Disabled. Way back in 1975, with the Education of All Handicapped Children Act, working directly with the then Senator Jacob Javits on giving definition to the person, to the child, who was not conventional meaning fit in to every mode that was already predetermined. So my first level of career was on the different learner. And then I began working one-on-one, and the different learner was one that had that same kind of curiosity, that same drive to be who they were, and not just be a ditto mark for something else. And so my specialty in private practice, the first private practice, was Apogee Learning Enhancement Training Systems as an educational consultant therapist. I chose the word apogee, or it chose me, how fate had it, because apogee is a term that defines the furthest point from the moon to the earth. And the sense was, if we reach our apogee, if we are supported in reaching our apogee, then we too would be open to going the distance, doing whatever was called for to reach that sense of light. As a poet, and currently a poet laureate, officially designated since 2010 as a Poet of the Year, and then 2011, based upon that particular level of service, assigned the permanent up to this year, still to be the 10th anniversary of my being the official designated poet laureate of Orangetown, which includes 10 towns under its jurisdiction. So with poetry comes this awareness of feeling, how to express it, how to make it known to others, and all begin to really understand the impact of words. That led me to want to understand, how do words, how do actions coupled with words bring us to be known? And therefore, how can we truly understand this vibratory existence that is brought for others to respond to? If I think of business, if I think of family, if I think of friends, even what happens on Facebook, there is a word that is very dominant. It's the underpinning, and it's the word accord. The word accord comes from the root of meaning two, and for the AC, and chord heart. So the word accord in its derivation means to reach someone according to heart. Whether one is in business having to do with the creative arts, or having to do with the advancement of a particular product, or the advancement of a particular industry. As I've read about businesses that have done well and have been enduring, the leadership has allowed themselves to understand accord. Not as we, as parents, to understand how we could be in accord with the developmental needs of our child, and teach the child the tolerance to be in accord with those that they are interacting with.
And
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. No, go right ahead. Right ahead. I know that you had really brought body language along in with words as well during one of our discussions. How does that interact with one another?
Well, body language is an internal manifestation of what we may not express. So if we have, fists that are clenched, and yet we're smiling at the person, the smile may be the facade, and the clenched fist may be the internal feeling of literally wanting not to have to tolerate what that person is giving forth. So when we learn to truly understand our internal feelings and how they may manifest themselves, are our fists clenched? Are our arms folded? Is our head down? are our shoulders um, sort of moving within as opposed to a relaxation and an opening. And dance is interesting because it is all body movement and communication. And it's oftentimes said how we relate is how we dance, which means how we relate is how both our body and our intention are one and the same. That's oftentimes when we say, oh, I really enjoyed speaking to that person. You know, she walks the walk and talks the talk. So, what are we saying? That body language is in accord with the intention.
Okay, now just let's use a practical example just for a moment, staying in this area for right now. I'm a salesperson, and I go in and I sit in front of someone who I am certainly interested in having them become a client, but I am not knowledgeable about what I'm seeing on the other side of the table, the desk, or wherever they may be sitting. What should I look for in that person if I want to know if they're receiving what I am giving?
I think the first thing is that you have to look into yourself. To what extent do you feel that what you're giving has worth, has merit? Are you presenting what it is in truth? Are you fudging some of the information, or are you open in presenting every aspect of your product or your intention? Self-knowledge and awareness of one's internal harmony or internal conflict will open or close the communication with another person.
And they can sense it, can't they?
Yeah,
Regardless of whether they realize they are openly or consciously, they are sensing it because our bodies do that.
exactly. For example, there were times when I was part of large social gatherings, and you had people who'd come over and say, "Oh, hello, how are you? Have you been?" And they're not even looking at you. They're skating around the room with their eyes to see who they want to make a connection with for their particular advantage. That's what then provokes a person into feeling that they're being used. They're not literally being valued. So again, and I go back to this consistently, understanding ourselves, know thyself, as put forward in the Adelphi, know thyself, know what that intention is, be one with that intention. And when delivering it, deliver it with right intention, which is that of truth, of integrity, and connecting to what that person may find of value. An example, as an educational consultant, therapist, working with school children across the grades, working with high school students in application for colleges. And they would put forward something, and I said, I don't want a rubber stamp statement that you consider you. If you are going to enter a particular college, it's important for you to know what the mission of that college is. What's the intent of the educational system? What types of courses are offered? How do you identify with all of that? And that's your application letter. How can you be a benefit to that college? Because that college, in its curriculum, in its offerings, in its instructional mode, is of service to you. And I feel that that is significantly important, whether we are applying for a job. What does that company want? What attributes does it value? So again, by knowing oneself, knowing what one wants from another person, you can then go back to the word, meet with an accord, with a mutual goal and a mutual vision of how each of you can complement one another.
So important for them to also realize, but you also have to do a lot of research in order to accomplish that. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. So look, uh, again, with the college application, I had them search the mission statement, the catalog. We use the catalog as a uh, as a map to figure out how we were to travel and to negotiate in order to acquire entree that was acceptable. And what's interesting about that process, especially for the high school student, is they had an opportunity to really take out the time because of the intended result to know themselves enough so that when they went on an interview, whether it be a college interview or an interview for a position in any capacity, that they had confidence. And the word confidence means with fidelity, and fidelity means with truth of self.
Now, just right now, Rosemary, we are, of course, in a very difficult time period. And I know many people feel that they are a victim. What does the word victim mean to you? What does that word mean?
When you're a victim, you've given up, literally, your own sense of victory. You've given up the power of your own volition. You've given over to another your own dominion. One can look at what is happening in the world. I'm not suggesting, that one literally bury their head in the sand. One can be a victim of what's happening, or one can be an observer to begin to be motivated, to begin to be directed to what it is that you individually can do, and to what extent can your individual volition attract others to do similarly. Victimhood is the giving over of one's power. It is allowing circumstances to circumvent your own initiatives.
And we're seeing that happen on a constant basis right now. And in some cases, I don't know if uh, I don't know if I fault some of the folks because a lot of this is not any of their problem, wasn't caused by them, but still, uh, as long as you consider yourself a victim, it will continue longer than maybe it should. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and that's very much in alignment, with what has been put forth in the law of attraction. The more you feel a victim, the more you attract victimhood. The more you look at something as, yes, this exists, to what extent can I be a participant in its resolve? Or to what extent does it really not affect me so that I compromise myself and therefore become incapable of doing what I am really capable of?
Well, you have a way in all of your studies, and I know you have studied with some of the greatest as far as some of your healing practices, for example. And I do want to touch on that as part of our discussion today. And I know that you believe that there are harmonics and music and so forth that can benefit people. You want to expand on that?
At 7, yes, I will. Thank you. At 7 years of age, I had the opportunity of hearing and seeing my first live orchestra. I was so taken that initially there was what we would call dissonance. Everyone was, quote, tuning up. And then once they tuned up and they followed the orchestration as put forth by the conductor, then all of a sudden everything worked together. There was harmony. There was this sense of mission without words that just provided this sense of people to people, intent to intent, and vision to vision. As I was listening and quite taken, and how we may explain this or not explain this is not what I'm going to address. As I was listening, I heard a voice inside. It's like the voice that you hear when you read. It's not a voice that is verbal, but it's a voice that's inside. And the voice inside said, "You are destined to tune up the world." At 7, I wasn't quite sure what it meant, but I did know that I was so taken by the effect of that orchestra that I needed to understand and know more. So we'll skip to the exploration that I went through for, oh my goodness, I would say almost a decade as a high school and college student. And that was listening and wanting to understand the power of a tuning fork. If a tuning fork could have created a point of reference for all of these instruments to be guided by, and then create this magnificent orchestration that spoke to every part of one's body, then what else could that tuning fork do for us? And that led me to the science of acupuncture, Ayurvedic medicine, ancient Egyptian writings, the workings of Thoth in regard to sound, vibration, and the sense of harmonies that allow man to man, woman to woman, community to community to be one in intention. I created, through what I learned, a system, and it's called apogee, which means to reach the furthest point within ourselves, acu, which means exactly on point, tone. So with tuning forks placed on acupuncture points and meridian pathways, which conduct energy from cell to cell, organ to organ, and organ system to organ system. And on the cranium points, bone is a resonant bone is a resonant mass that carries the vibrations. So by placing tuning forks on the different parts of the cranium, different parts of the organ system, one can create a communication. And that communication is what is called an entrainment. An entrainment means when one is functioning in communication with the other. That system allows pain to be dissolved. That system allows the stress factors to be appreciably reduced. That system allows the balance between the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. A simple way of being able to refer to those systems is the sympathetic nervous system, S, associated with stress. That's your fight or flight. That's your anxiety. That's your doubt and fear. And then the parasympathetic, P, associate that with peace, which means the body is in a position to restore, the body is in a position to be creative, the body is in a position to transcend. So when we are in harmonic accord, we are allowing the parasympathetic system to reign supreme. And that is the purpose of anything that is going to facilitate our health and well-being, whether we are going to apply it to business, apply it to arts, education, etc. So after much technical study, as you referred to earlier, and integration, and then a distillation, 1983, I launched simultaneously Apogee Learning Enhancement Training Systems, which was understanding learning style, motivation, and how to cultivate both, and Apogee Occutone, which was to allow the body to be in an extremely relaxed state, which is the state of receptivity. So understanding words and vibration, understanding intent and plan of operation, again, going back to what extent is it in accord? Accord with our propensities, accord with the intention of who we are wanting to serve or in some way support.
And in most simplistic way, Rosemary, we all know the feeling of uh, listening to a piece of music. I don't care if it's classical or one of your favorite songs of another genre, but we all know the feeling of how it makes our bodies feel.
Exactly.
So that, in its simplistic form, is what you're talking about, but you're using it in a more scientific way.
Yes. What it is that very often music, in terms of its appeal, its attraction, because of the particular melodic um, interface of it. So one can say, I like rock, I like jazz, I like classical, whatever it is. When giving the pure sound, the sound is not processed sound. It is from pure medical grade stainless steel tuning forks that are calibrated to the exact frequencies of the different areas of the nerve plexes, which are the nerve centers on our spine. So you don't have to like it and you don't have to dislike it because it's neutral, pure sound. This is administered through Tibetan singing bowls. It is administered through crystal singing bowls, through any musical instrument. So the Sound Sanctuary, Apogee Sound Sanctuary, has a collection of all kinds of instruments. It isn't to play music, it is to balance self through pure vibration. And it's been working quite beautifully. If anyone wants to avail themselves of the documentation and the kinds of things that have evolved, I have a blog spot, obviously, to this effect, and it's open to anyone anytime they choose, via the internet.
And in fact, for everyone listening, I have a list of about 12 sites that she has up for you and your training and experience in her blog. Also has something on there called The Winning Warrior. What is that about in your blog? And I draw everybody's attention to that. I read it and it's fantastic. So, would you like to just briefly tell us about The Winning Warrior in your blog?
Sure, thank you. The winning warrior is simply the winning of that which in any shape or form wars against you. How to clear yourself of anything that could be an obstacle, a delay, a distraction. It's a 7-step program, and each one of the steps are described, and they are literally the steps to regain complete power and complete dominion over self. It's a program that evolved over a period of 3 decades. And for those that have chosen to go the way of the winning warrior, there's no mystery in it. It's all based upon what it is that moves the human condition in one direction or another, that enhances the human condition, that empowers the human condition, and allows the human condition to be a harmonic experience for the person. Therefore, the person learns how to negotiate conflict, how to negotiate a sense of non-belonging, how to neutralize things that only have power because we've given it power, how to neutralize impressions that in some way are contradictory to our goals and our visions. I encourage everyone and anyone just to familiarize themselves with it by availing themselves of that experience.
And they can do so by going to your blog, which I will have the URL up for them to be able to experience it and go through that particular program. The Winning Warrior is, as I said, after reading it, I was transfixed almost as far as what I needed to do because I fall short in so many ways. I guess as all of us do at times. You also have something, Rosemary, called the 5 elements of structure. What kind of structure and what are we talking about here?
There are 4 basic elements that every and any living form in some way is involved with, affected by, and initiates. Whether one is a plant, one is a bird, or one is a being, the element of earth, the element of water, the element of fire, the element of air. So those are your 4 basic. The 5th is the element of what they call the esters rather, and that's like more of the ethereal. So the 5th is particularly selective for the human condition, and that is speech, vision, and a sense of oneself in the greater aspect of creation. Each of the elements is associated with a consciousness and a physiology. The root energies, which is that of earth, is associated with our physiology of the bowels. And therefore, if physically there's anything amiss with the bowels, with any aspect of elimination, then there's something that is interfering with that. And part of understanding the structure of ourselves and literally how to be the winner in every aspect of our expression, we then appreciate that by understanding the consciousness of survival and understanding the physiology of that part of our body, and then we go to the next, which is the element of water associated structurally with our kidneys, bladder, and or our procreative organs. Then the third, fire, which is associated with all of our digestive elements. And then the fourth, air, which is associated with our heart and lungs. And then the fifth element associated with our throat, our eyes, and our mindfulness. So the structure of our self is in alignment with the structure of the intent of life in harmony.
I think you once spoke of the fifth element to also as the term communication.
Yes, because it is the throat, eyes, and mindfulness. So how we express, what we hear, how we interpret what we hear, what we see, how we interpret what we see, and how we choose to think or ascend beyond our immediate into a vision. All of that is interrelated to communication, because what is communication? It's a commune with one. And when we can be a commune with one, with ourselves, every system in communication, no obstacle, no no interference between the communication of one system to another. Now, how do we may go to a doctor? How does the doctor know? Initially, they're asking, well, what are you feeling? Where's the pain? Let me see, et cetera, et cetera.
You at one time in your life had an extremely radical experience. I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about it or not, because this is not. I know you're into wellness, and just as a disclaimer, we're not talking about healing. We're talking about wellness. But I know that you in your life had a very, very unique experience. Would you like to talk about that?
Well, if you're referring to the fact that at a point where everything seemed to be, a-okay, uh, a wife, a mother of 3 beautiful sons, a lovely home outside of New York City, the suburb of the city, awards and accolades for all the kinds of things that I brought forward in my community service. A number of plaques and honorary events. And I was diagnosed with breast cancer. That set me to think. I've done everything that has allowed me to obtain the approval academically, in terms of the community, in terms of my contribution to the good and the wellness of students and other people that I had worked with. So, what was it within me that brought about this body to consume itself? Because that's what cancer is. It's consuming itself, and uh, it's not functioning with the limitation. So it consumes and destroys. And I thought I needed to know, what was it that I was allowing to consume and destroy in spite of all the accolades and honors and accomplishments. And that's what set me on to understand, we need to understand myself, the body, the mind, and the suppressed destiny. Again, what does the breast connote? It is both the giving and the receiving of love, nurturance, and the acceptance. And I had to face so that I could dissolve that force that in some way was putting shadow on my purpose in life. I had a dream, and the dream was my seeing myself at a funeral layout and hearing the people stating, "Oh, she was so good. She did this, she did that, blah, 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 blah." And I said, "No, I'm not finished yet. I have to understand what this body is doing, what this consciousness needs to bring forward." And that's what started me on the search, truly the search for self, the search for self, where in truly lie my spirit, where truly was my evolution, where was love absent or not absent, and what sense of faith or freedom did I need to reconnect myself with. And that's when Know Thyself became the theme of all the days that were to follow, including this very moment. I did not have chemo. I did not have radiation. I went into, and I'm not subscribing this for anyone else, this was my path and my destiny. I went through the path of consciousness and what was to serve my body. Many habits that served me, but apparently weren't serving the deeper aspect of my consciousness, I changed. And the whole concept of change was the experience of liberation, knowing oneself truly. I'm not going to hide the years that have brought me to where I am. At my last birthday, I was 82 years of age. I turned my eyesight around through these processes of knowing thyself. At 82 years of age, and for the last 5 years, since I entered into that consciousness of I'm willing to see everything and anything. I am not going to be a victim. I'm going to be an observer, and I'm going to respond. I'm not going to be reactive. I'm going to be responsive. And those are the things that very personally allows me to speak this day with the confidence that wherever you are on your life path, if it's not serving you in whatever capacity you yet want to venture toward, there is a way. And it has been said, Rosemary, you walk the walk and talk the talk. And at 82 years of age, I run up and down the steps to the internal song of Rocky.
Rocky, no less. Okay.
Rocky. I was born in the year of the tiger, and therefore the eye of the tiger is also a life theme for me.
Uh, well, as they say, or as has been said, the truth you speak. And that was by our friend Yoda, right? And
Exactly.
so
I
the
was given
as
a
they
gift.
close the fort, may the force be with you. You have a little story on that too, don't you?
Yes, in fact, I'm smiling because on my computer table, there is a statue of Yoda that was sent to me by one of the people, obviously, that completed, and his testimonial is on my blog, that completed the Winning Warrior program. And he said to me, "You will forever be my Yoda." And he sent me that statue as a gesture of gratitude for the transformation that he experienced. And he has chosen, and it's on the blog, to go absolutely public with his story. And it's a story of transformation.
And proud you were.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
yes, I'll get off the Yoda language now, and I'm going to wrap up with a very special story too. It's concerning your family and your grandchildren. You were part of a very special project nearby you, in which you actually wrote a poem, which became part of a monument. And I don't know if you have the poem in front of you that you can read. And I would like you to describe that moment that you told me about, which I felt was so special.
Well, what it was is that my sent to me was a picture of my grandson and my granddaughter standing in front of the particular monumental display. At the Piermont Pier in New York was the place where those that were destined to go to fight in World War II had their training and they were disembarked. I have I was brought up, as I said, with the age that I happily shared during World War II. And as a student of public school education, patriotism, saluting the flag, singing all kinds of songs that in some way or form energized us. And there was one song that I would sing all the time as a young girl and march to. Um, many may who are listening may know it, and many who are listening may not. But it was "Start me with 10 who are stout-hearted men, and I'll soon give you 10,000 more. Shoulder to shoulder and bolder," and it goes on. And this sense of power of self upon self, with self, for the good of self, became an underlying theme, and a theme that obviously I reconnected with when I was on the path of being cancer free. And I've been cancer free completely since 1983. I take, fortunately, I take no medication and I am fully active and deeply grateful for the opportunity to live these many years and still feel the passion and the potential of what more can be offered. So, again, one can go to the Apogee Poets blog and put in the word veterans, in the upper left-hand corner, and one will be brought to the whole story of that monument dedicated to veterans. And as a poet laureate for the last 10 years, every Memorial Day and every Veterans Day, I compose an original poem in tribute to our veterans and have been awarded accordingly.
Well, I must ask you to read a full one for us as we close. Do you mind?
Read a full poem?
Uh, One of your veterans' poems before we close
Uh,
out this particular podcast.
all right, you'll have to um, allow me to um, go to the file to pick one out. So
All right.
I'll be back in just a moment.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. This is fascinating to me. The years of experience, the things that she has not only taken the time to study and to uh, put into her life experiences, but also just the fact that the dedication to herself and others, herself meaning her body and her spirit, which she's then able to move out and give to other people. How many of us think in terms of ourselves most of the day and don't really reach out to others thinking about what they need and have the power and have the health and have the thoughtfulness to do it? And this is one woman who has spent her life doing this, even developing programs for the special children with special needs in New York, developing an entire program for those. Now, if that's not giving, I don't know what is. And it's a very tough way, or a tough thing to do. But boy, if you have your heart in it, it is an absolutely special thing to accomplish. So it's this has been a pleasure today, and I simply wanted
I,
Rosemary to reach
I,
out with one of her poems because she has, by the way, many books that have been published. She has many poems that she has been published. Not only is she a writer, an author, a poet laureate, but a keynote speaker at events, and has lived a wonderful, wonderful life. I'm so happy to share her with you on Unintentional Heroes today because I really, really believe she has a lot to offer all of us.
thank
So,
you.
Rosemary,
And
are you back yet?
yes, I am. I thank you. And in
Must
terms,
be a walk to the file cabinet. Okay.
in
You
terms,
know, the Unintentional Heroes podcasts are are meant to bring you people just like this. Next week we have a highly skilled marketing person, which will be bringing you some very unique skills that I know that you want to be a part of. So while she's doing that, I'll do a little plug for our next podcast next Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time on the local chamber influencers group. And if you're not a member of that and are listening in, please come across, join in, and participate. Share, comment, and post. We're happy to have all and anyone as part of our organization, our group, our training, which is primarily about how to make the Chamber of Commerce your number one business partner. But along with that, you can be in the chamber, but you also need life skills to make you most successful. All right, Rosemarie, how are you?
I'm here and I'm back, and I have the poem. Um, and there was a beautiful ceremony that was created. Again, many of the photos are on the blog. And these are the words: flowers and flags in devoted array, a loving tribute and homage this day to honor those who lived a cause, this moment, this day, and so a pause. Hearts and souls in valor known, right intention and devotion shown, battlefields of victory and plight, through all beheld freedom's light. Answered they did to liberty's plea, that freedom be held for a you, a me. Sons and daughters, husbands and wives, children of purpose have given their lives. The breath of freedom, an endowment divine, bequeathed to life yours, life mine. With valor and sacrifice, life they gave, and embraced the call, yet to be brave. In memorial and reverence gather we, for held be the right that we live free. Memory of each life gone, never to fade. Live we life's blessings for sacrifice made.
Absolutely beautiful, Rosemary, and so very special. I can't thank you enough for joining us today and for being a part of Unintentional Heroes. I know and I am sure that we'll be talking again together soon, as I certainly want to uh, maintain a friendship with someone as special as you. So thank you so much for being a part of this particular podcast.
And of
Is there
course,
anything you would like to say before we close,
well,
Rose?
yes, I want to say thank you, Christopher Knight. The conversations we've had have been felt as a gift, because the only way we can feel that we truly give is if someone else is also willing to receive. So I thank you deeply.
As I do too, for a wonderful life experience. All right, unintentional heroes. Now, I don't know if you felt the same thing I felt during this entire series with Rosemarie, but you can see that all of her life experiences are stacked on top of one another for one specific reason. Really, there is some continuity here that's very important, and that is that she not only is caring and focusing on her body, her spirit, her soul, but she is focusing on those around her too, in order to give back. Those qualities can never be equaled unless you actually intend to do it. Intention, as she say, unintentional heroes, no, intention is the strongest word. And I thank everyone for being here today, and I will see you next Saturday on Unintentional Heroes. And as we close, always remember to listen, learn, and give.